Welcome to Vegan Finds. Today is the last day of Cajun week, and we're going to finish it off with a classic Cajun dessert, beignets. Now, beignet is a yeast dough, and the first thing that we need to do is proof the yeast. So I have some warm water. I'm going to add a quarter cup of sugar to this, and one package of yeast. So, whenever you're starting a yeasted dough product, you have to proof the yeast. So, when you're adding the water, you do not want the water to be hot. If the water burns your fingers, it's too hot. It should actually be slightly above body temperature, between 100, 105, 110 is the max. So we're going to just let the yeast proof here, and it should start to foam. If it does not start to foam up, then your yeast is probably dead. And if it's dead, start with a different pack. Hopefully you have some extra yeast handy. I know that it was tough during the initial phases of the virus to get yeast because everybody was apparently making bread. But I'm going to let the yeast proof and get the other ingredients put together, so when it's time to add the yeast to the actual dough, everything will be set and ready to go. Since this is an egg-based yeast dough, I need to use an egg replacer. So I'm using the neat egg, and I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of neat egg, and I'm going to add to that 2 tablespoons of water and whisk that together. So that's going to be the egg, and to that I'm going to add a half a cup of evaporated coconut milk. We just found this, so that's kind of neat. Hopefully you can find this in your store. You can buy it online. It's a bit pricey. Actually, this little can itself was like $3.49, so it's on the pricey side, but I believe that the results will be worth it. So I'm going to get the water, and I'm going to whisk this in, and then I'm going to measure out our evaporated milk, whisk that in, and then I will add in the gluten-free flour. Okay, so I've added my water. I'm just going to whisk this together, and you'll see this becomes very gelatinous, just like an egg would be gelatinous. Doesn't smell like an egg. At least this one doesn't. Or maybe my sense of smell is off. So that's ready. Now I'm going to add the evaporated coconut milk. Kind of gooey, ooey gooey, we'll call it. So I'm going to actually mix this up first before adding it to the thing, so I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so you can see it now has the consistency of evaporated milk. It tastes like evaporated milk, only with a hint of coconut to it. So I'm going to measure out a half a cup here, providing I don't spill it everywhere, which is known to happen. Okay, so I'm adding the half a cup to our egg mixture right now. I'm going to whisk that in. So get that all nicely incorporated, and then I'm going to add in the flour to this. Okay, so now this is all well incorporated. I'm going to get the flour. I'm going to use the Better Batter flour mix for this particular confection pastry. Adding in 1 cup of the flour to start, because we're going to do this in the slow process, so it's going to be in 3 stages. We're going to add in the first cup of flour. Then we're going to add in some vegetable shortening. We're just going to kind of cut that in almost like you would a biscuit. And then we're going to add the rest of our flour plus our yeast. And you can see this yeast is now really foamy. So this is very active. It's good yeast. So that means we're going to be ready to go momentarily and finish off building our dough. Okay, so I've added the 1 cup. I'm just going to start incorporating the dough, the flour into our milk and egg mixture. For those of you who are just tuning in, that's vegan egg, not egg. You can see it's already starting to work. 2 tablespoons of vegetable shortening to this, which I'm just going to liberally cut into this bit of dough, and then add another cup of flour to that. Okay, so I have my vegetable shortening here. I'm actually going to cut it up into little cubes. So we can cut that in. I also need to put in just a teeny tiny bit of salt into this. So I'm going to do that as well, and I'm just going to cut that in to the dough. Now, if for some reason you do not have a solid vegetable shortening, like a Crisco type products, you can use margarine. You can use coconut oil. Obviously, you want the solid coconut oil, not the one that's been modified to be liquid at room temperature. So let me just get the salt. I'm just going to put in a pinch, and then I'm going to cut this into our dough right now, and then we're going to add the final ingredients. And this yeast is going out of control right now. This is just out of control yeast right here. So these beignets should rise nicely, and we'll be good to cook soon. The shortening is going to add kind of like a lightness to the dough that you wouldn't normally get from a regular yeast dough. So this is going to let them puff up a little bit more, and considering that this is a gluten-free dough, anything to add a little bit of lightness to a fried gluten-free product is probably a good thing, because they tend to be very dense on the baked good side. Batters and doughs have gotten significantly better, but then again, it's always best to test these things before you pass it along on to friends. So this is all set. I got everything cut in. I'm going to have to switch to something a little bit tougher than a rubber spatula, so I'm going to go old school wooden spoon style in a moment. I'm going to get the additional flour set up and ready to go, and then we're going to finish this dough off. Okay, so I have 2 3/4 cups of flour left to add, so I'm adding 3/4 cup right now, and I'm going to add a little bit of the yeast mixture. I'm just going to give it a little stir. It is super foamy, super active. It's good to go. GTG, good to go. So we're going to start with a little bit of that. And we're going to start incorporating our yeast into our dough. Okay, this is looking good. Okay. Save a little for the final addition of flour. Of course, if you had a mix master, it would be a lot easier than doing it by hand. But I need the workout, No gym? Let bread become your gym. builds up that arm strength. Of course, it's just going to be my right arm, because if I tried to do this with my left arm, stuff would be flying everywhere. Can I even do it left-handed? Not really. I need to practice that. There we go. All right. And now we're almost ready for the final additions. So I'm going to do that. I just want to make sure I get everything off the bottom, because I will turn this out onto the counter momentarily and finish it off. Okay, so I've added the final cup of sugar. Now I'm going to add the rest of the yeast to this. We're going to mix it up, turn it out onto our surface, give it a little knead action, and then roll it out and let it sit. So I'm going to continue to mix this, and when it's ready, I will show you what it looks like. I'm getting ready to roll this out. I floured my surface, and you basically want this to be rolled out to about a 1/2 inch thickness, rectangle if you can get it. If you can't, no big deal. Beignets are not meant to be perfect unless you're going to Cafe Du Monde. Those are typically as good a beignets you're ever going to find. I'm going to try and do myself a little bit of a favor by trying to get this as rectangly as possible. Of course, I didn't leave myself much room to do this, but if you've watched any of our videos, you'd know that would be par for the course. So I'm going to roll this out a little bit. I will show you when I'm ready to cut it up into squares and get it ready for the hot oil treatment. Okay, so I got my dough rolled out, and I'm just going to trim the edges a little bit. I'm going to use that as our testing dough. And basically, I mean, you could get fancy, you can cut them into parallelograms. I'm just going to cut mine into squares, to be honest with you. I don't need to get all fancy. Normally I'd use a pizza cutter, but the pizza cutter is MIA. Probably in the dishwasher. And I'm going to let these guys proof for about an hour. I'm just going to let them rest. You know, you beat this dough into submission. You want to give it a little bit of a break. Make sure that these guys come apart. And they're good to go. They're not stuck to the counter, which has happened before. So I'm going to let these rest for an hour. I'll be back. I'll have some hot oil. You want the oil at 350, between 350 and 375. Cut yourself a little tester piece. Throw it in there. If it puffs up nicely, cooks to golden brown pretty quickly, you're good. And then you just start tossing them in, not all at once, two or three at a time, as much as your pot can allow for. And you know, in 15-20 minutes you'll be done. So I'll be back and we'll see how these guys look, and we're going to cook them off. Okay, so our beignets have been resting now for about an hour. I'm heating up the oil, and in probably about 10 minutes the oil will be to the right temperature, and we will start frying these babies up and getting them nice and golden. So I'll be back. Oil is at temperature. Now it's time to add our beignets. You want to drop these away from you so you don't be splashing the oil on you. Now it took about 20 minutes for this oil to heat up. So I'm going to start cooking 3 at a time. Now with the gluten-free dough, you may not get the same kind of browning effect that you would with regular flour, but I don't know, we'll see. We're going to flip this. Okay, I flipped that one a little too early, but you can see it definitely is a little on the brown side. So probably 1 to 2 minutes for each side. I used actually an instant read thermometer, a relic from my meat eating days. And I'm going to shut that sucker off so it doesn't keep beeping. Oh yeah, that's looking good. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to drain them on some paper towels. You're going to want to get some powdered sugar ready so you can sugar them up. And if they're browning too quickly, you can lower the heat just a teeny tiny bit. Don't stick your face over the pan. It's a good way to get a nice burn on your face. But they should rise to the top immediately. You may want to put some sugar on that, my dear. Pepper is here because she wants some. I know how she is. She only loves me for my beignets. Yep. What do you need help with? Continue to cook these, and I will show you what they look like when they're done. Okay, so there you have it. I got a little strawberry coulis that I just made from some strawberries that were basically about to expire. Here are our beignets. They're ready to eat. Powdered sugar on both sides, or you could put powdered sugar in a paper bag and shake them up. That's basically what they do at Cafe Du Monde. Enjoy. If you like these videos, please click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment and give us a thumbs up. Thank you, be safe, and sayonara.